Welcome to my unboxing and first impressions of the Mars 300 wireless transmission system by Hollyland. Hollyland reached out to me and asked me if I'd do a quick unboxing and kind of give you my first impressions and my use cases of this wireless transmission system. It is a 300-foot dual HDMI wireless transmission system that you can kind of piggyback off of and have like director's monitors connected to it and everything like that. So I'm trying to get the box open as I kind of talk about some of the specifications of this system. So right off the bat, you get some documentation and instructions on how to use this. I'm always about looking at manuals and stuff like that. And then on the top, there's this little thing here. So we'll get that out of the way. Let's pull out the receiver. So there is the receiver. And then here is the transmitter. Let's put these off to the side for a moment while we look at what comes in the box. So getting into the box, you can see there's this DC wall adapter. It comes with the ability to change your region. So depending on the region that you purchase this thing from, it will come with the designated location plug adapter. This power supply is 100 to 240 volt and it will work in any region. It has a screw enabled connection, so it doesn't come unplugged inadvertently if you have it plugged in directly into your system. You get 5 antennae. So Hollyland includes an extra or spare in case you break one, which is nice of them to do so. These screw directly onto the transmitter and receiver. We'll look at those in more detail here in a moment.
Hollyland also includes a micro USB to full USB-A adapter for you to update the firmware on the receiver and transmitter when the time comes.
And then finally at the bottom, you get one cold shoe adapter mount. So this can mount directly to the top of your DSLR or mirrorless camera.
And then finally, you get a horizontal quarter 20 mount for either the transmitter or the receiver. So you only get one of these, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in detail in a bit.
Let's get the box out of the way and take a closer look at the transmitter and receivers of the Hollyland Mars 300. First up is the receiver. On the top, you can see there's 2 screw mounts for that mount that was included in the box in case you want to mount it in a different orientation or something like that, because there is a quarter 20 on the bottom as well. So you could mount this directly here and then mount it on top of your camera system, because on the back of this, you can see there's this Sony NPF style battery housing. So that's what's going to be used with this system, NPF style batteries. And they click in really nicely and securely, and they stay there pretty nicely. And then there's a little release right here to pull the battery out, and comes out cleanly. So you can see that this thing is pretty low profile and kind of meant for like gimbal setups and DSLRs and mirrorless cameras. Let's start at the top here. You can see that there are 2 covers covering the actual antennae connections, and you literally just screw these on like so, and it's good for transport and stuff like that, so you can take them off. You can move them in different directions if you need to. On this side of the receiver, you can see there are 2 HDMI outs and the DC port. And on the bottom, I already showed you, is the quarter 20. On this side is the power indicators and link indicator and channel assign button. And then there's also a micro USB for any firmware updates. And then finally the power button and the power switch, which is it's recessed, so you're not gonna inadvertently hit it, but you could possibly do that. As you can see, I'm kind of let's see if I can get a little bit closer and show you how that could be inadvertently hit. You see that? It is recessed, but just be careful of powering it off. Onto the transmitter, again, the 2 threaded M4, I think these are M4 threads for that mount that's included if you wanted to mount this directly onto a camera system. Similar design on the bottom. There's a quarter 20, and then you got the 2 antennae covers. Then you just install them the same exact way as you would do on the receiver. Some of the antennae are a little bit more loose on the pan axis, and similar to what we did with the receiver, on this side you can see there's a loop out on the transmitter, so you could loop this in from whatever camera system and going out to another, maybe like a director's monitor or something like that. So there are 2 full-size HDMI ports on this side to do that, and you want the HDMI in to go here, and then it passes that onto the receiver, and the receiver transcodes that video signal for you to kind of monitor. DC port here as well, going around the bottom, quarter 20. Around the other side, this is the video and link, LED indicators, the channel button to map a different channel, again with the firmware upgrade, power button, and the recessed power switch. As you can see, that this one you could also inadvertently trigger if you had some sort of loose clothing or something like that, but it is recessed, so it kind of helps with that. So that is the transmitter. Same with the receiver. These are Sony NPF style batteries that are accepted on this module. It looks like it's already looking for a link because I have the power on when I inserted the battery, which isn't recommended. So we'll go ahead and remove the battery by depressing this little switch, pulling the battery out, and it's a super lightweight system. Let's go ahead and take a look at some use case that I'm going to use this system for. Because I want my transmitter to have a little bit lower profile, I'm going to install this mount here, this quarter 20 mount on top of this using a flathead, which is included. The bad thing about this whole setup is that they only include one of these mounts. I wish they would have included two in the purchase of this system, because I want this to be resting on my camera this way. So when I install the cold shoe, it is in this orientation with the battery facing up and having the HDMI go out the side, instead of where I'm forced with, let's pull out the actual receiver. And they also didn't include an additional cold shoe, so good thing I had one laying around. I wish they would include two of those as well, because I'm gonna have to have the receiver on my actual monitor in this orientation. So it's going to be up on whatever cold shoe mount or anything like that. So with the receiver, I have more kind of leeway with how it's oriented. And the way that I'm going to use it is on a big screen TV where I'm monitoring like some A-roll and stuff like that. So it really doesn't matter that it's in this orientation. With the camera, I want it this way because the weight's distributed evenly in the horizontal orientation, and it makes it easier to mount to like gimbals and whatnot because it's a lower center of gravity instead of it being up like this and tilting and whatnot. So just be aware that if Hollyland is seeing this video, from my initial impressions, I wish they would include two of these mounts in the box when you purchase this, and two cold shoe adapters, so you could have both the transmitter and the receiver in this orientation if you need to. So instead of just kind of telling you about how that goes, here's the actual transmitter. So that's where I want that. I want the signal from my camera to go out into monitor space where I need it. And you see it's much better and more manageable in this orientation because it's not so tall. So I'll take off the transmitter really quick and we can take a look at how the transmitter would look if it were to have to be in this orientation. So you can see that this is getting really crazy. When I turn it over to its side, you'll see what I'm talking about. Can't even fit it into frame. You can see how the center of gravity has become kind of unmanageable in this orientation. So just keep that in mind. So here's a prime use case for this setup. The Hollyland Mars 300 transmitter is on top of my Sony a7 III, and it is passing out video to my Sony X850D television to where I can get a huge reference to see if I'm in focus or anything like that. When it comes to A-roll and all that type of stuff, I don't have a reversible screen on my Sony a7 III, so I can quickly look up, check if I'm in focus, and then get back to business. It also helps me with kind of shooting products and whatnot, and it had added value for $499 USD at the time of this video. I think it's a pretty good value for its option, or value for what it gives you. You can see that there is a 50 millisecond delay, because if I hold my hand up really quick, my hand gets there first and then I can see it on the screen in the peripherals of my vision there. So I'm much quicker than what the actual transmitter is able to communicate. Works really well with Sony NP 750s, I think, NP series. These are 750s. I can get about an hour to an hour and 20 minutes of shoot time and actual transmission time. I do notice that I get a little bit more battery life on the receiver. For whatever reason, it consumes less power. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the specifications of the transmitter. It's under 6 watts of power consumption, weighs about 6.5 ounces without battery. It accepts a bunch of different formats of video input: 480p at 60 hertz, 576p at 50 hertz, 720p at 50 and 60 hertz. Additionally, it has 1080i at 50 and 60 hertz, and also accepts 1080p at 30, 50 and 60 hertz. It has a 5 gigahertz frequency, so it's not going to be interrupted by all of the other things that float around out there that are usually on the 2.4 gigahertz band. So you're going to get a stronger signal in that regard. And probably the most important specification of the transmitter is that it is about 50 milliseconds of transmission latency. So it's not zero latency, and it's probably not as good as some of your more expensive systems, but it does a really good job. So moving on to the receiver, it does a better job in power consumption. So it's a little under 5 watts, weighs exactly the same as the transmitter, is about 6.5 ounces, and is exactly the same in the dimensions realm. And it accepts the same video signal that the transmitter does. It's exactly the same, and it serves a different purpose in the workflow chain. Well, that about does it for this in this initial impressions and unboxing video of the Hollyland Mars 300 wireless transmission system. Before I close, I must disclose Hollyland was kind enough to send this video system out to me for testing and review. Without them, this video would not be possible. If you're interested in pricing and availability, it will be linked in the description of this video. Those are my affiliate links, so shopping through them give me a little bit of a kickback, but cost you nothing additional to kind of shop through those, and those are what keep the channel running and allow me to kind of make content for you like this. If you like this video, please feel free to give me a thumbs up. If you didn't, you know what to do. Thank you for taking the time to watch. I'm Tomas, and I will catch you in the next one.